Hey, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I've been joined by the Honorable Councilmember Jose Rizar. My understanding is Councilmember Weiss won't be making it this afternoon. Just a few items to keep in mind during this committee. There's one, when you approach the microphone, get as close as you can because the acoustics here are terrible. So if you can speak into the microphone, we'd appreciate that very much. If you need to have a conversation, please take it outside. We appreciate your cooperation only because of the difficulty in being able to hear. When you do come up to the microphone, please give us your name and address. And if the person before you has already made the point you wanted to make, it's okay to say you agree with the previous speaker and add anything that is different. If you work on a very eloquent letter, please keep in mind that you need to get to the main point of the letter before the 2 minutes. And you can submit the letter to the clerk for the record. That being said, I thought we had a consent calendar, but we don't. So we have quite a few specials. Item number 1, Roberta.
Before we start, Councilmember, items number 5A and 5B have been continued.
That's right, Barbara.
To March 24th in Plum Committee and 31st in Council. There's, I think, one speaker card on the side.
Okay, so items 5A and B have been continued to Council March 31st, to Plum March 24th. So we have several cards here on those items, and I just want to make sure that you're not waiting since we are going to continue this item. So we have Dr. Clyde Williams, Dan Sparks, Amy Shin, and Benjamin Resnick. That item's been continued. That's for items. I'm sorry. Those were for item 6. My bad. We do have Dr. Clyde Williams on this one on both, so those been continued. Okay. Item number 2.
Actually, do you want to go back to item 1, Councilman?
Yes.
Yeah, item 1 is a report from the Planning Commission. It's a proposed ICO within the proposed Echo Park Community Design Overlay Study Area.
Okay. So the staff just want to give us a brief. We're going to go there. Yeah.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Arthi Varma, Planning Department staff to this project. Before you is an interim controlled ordinance for the proposed Echo Park Community Design Overlay Study Area. The ICO would prohibit the issuance of building and demolition permits until a CDO is established for the area. The ICO is generally bound by Sunset Boulevard on the north, the Hollywood Freeway on the south, Bonnie Bray Street on the west, and Echo Park Avenue on the east. So it's the area just around the Echo Park Lake. It's largely a multiple family neighborhood with some commercial land uses along Sunset Boulevard. Just by way of background information, there is an existing ICO over the area. The proposed Echo Park CDO study area was actually an identified program that came out of the Silver Lake Echo Park Elysian Valley Community Plan update. The program directed that the area further be studied for eligibility for an HPOZ or other permanent land use regulatory program. At that time, the existing ICO was established, and the city entered into a program to contract with a historic resources consultant to do a study for the area. That ICO is set to expire in March of 2009. During the full term of that ICO, the Department of City Planning has been actively pursuing the area's eligibility for an HPOZ. Since the survey was completed earlier this year and found a relatively low level of contributing structures, staff is recommending a community design overlay as the appropriate land use regulatory mechanism for the area, because the area does contain an original intact development pattern and a unique neighborhood character. So this ICO that is before you today would continue to put a moratorium on building permits and demolition permits affecting the exterior of structures in order that neighborhood character can be preserved until permanent land use regulations for the area, a CDO, can be established.
Okay. So we are going to take a more flexible approach with the design overlay as opposed to...
Correct.
Okay.
It's a more flexible tool for the area.
Right. So we could have to approve the draft of the ICO and request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance, Councilman? The second, that'll be the action of this committee. Thank you. Next item, Roberto?
That would be item 2, Councilman. It's a report from the Director of Planning and the Planning Commission. It's an ordinance and various land use entitlements for the construction of 81 condo units in CD7.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Frank Kwan, hearing officer with the City Planning Department. The project of 81 residential condos along with a commercial option, there are 2 options here in conjunction with a golf course retail on the subject property, both adding up to about 12,000 square feet of additional retail space. Basically, it's a project that is going into an area that's already been entitled, along with 600 plus residential condominiums and 230 apartments. So this is a tweaking, if you will, of a much larger scale project. The larger project is approximately 260 acres as opposed to the 40 acres that's being adjusted at this point. And the entitlements being requested here are general plan amendments for low, medium 1 residential to a minimum residential, and the reverse of that to make these adjustments. There's also a couple of zone changes involved regarding changing the A1 zone to RD3 and the reverse of that in some other sub-areas. And then there's a zone change of A1 to QA1 to make adjustments and include Q conditions for the new zone ordinance. And then finally there's a zone variance involved allowing commercial uses on an A zone and an RD zone. So that's the gist of the request and the project. The commission approved the variance and recommends that the Plum Committee and City Council approve of the general plan amendment and zone changes.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have 2 speaker cards. Mr. Clyde Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Clyde T. Williams. I'm resident of 4115 Barrett Road in El Sereno. Basically, you need to send this one back. It seems like a rather large shell game of moving things around within the project site. The mitigated negative declaration is largely measures required by the city already. So they're not really mitigating anything because you can't mitigate something that has to be required. Need adequate mitigation, especially for the traffic, fire, and runoff risks from the site to the freeway and the ramps. Runoff downstream affects the water quality and also the flood protection of downstream users. Fire hazards, Silmar has already had a problem. Growth inducement, combined effects of other projects. These were not included, and no mitigation monitoring and reporting program was provided that was adequate. It's bad planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Dr. Williams. Next speaker is Mike Armbruster.
Thank you, members of the committee. Mark Armbruster. I'm the applicant, and my partner is Tom Clark is here also as the applicant in this case. We're here to urge you to recommend adoption of the Planning Commission approval with one minor change, which I will pass out to you, which I've reviewed with staff and with the council office. That minor change is one sentence which was in the prior approval which just allows us a little bit of flexibility in where the lots are placed on the project. It simply adds the sentence which says, however, the number of dwelling units in any lot or sub-area may vary as long as the maximum number of dwelling units does not exceed the density allowed by the RD31 zone. Again, we've already reviewed that with the council office and with planning department, who are fine with it. Last thing I want to say is we worked extensively and closely with the community in the area and with the council office. This project is over mitigated with regard to traffic control as well as all the other appropriate mitigation measures. Again, we've worked closely with everybody, and we urge that you recommend approval of the Planning Commission report with that one minor change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armbruster. Staff would like to come on up? In terms of the language that he's introducing, this technical language, have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, I have. I recall it's consistent with the previous zone change ordinance, which I was also the hearing officer on that case. So I think it's appropriate in this situation. It's an additional cap, if you will, to verify that the density will not exceed the zone. So staff is okay with it.
Okay. In terms of Mr. Williams' observation regarding his analysis, could you comment on that?
Basically, the latest, I'm going to say the earlier versions of the projects and the earlier entitlements were approved under the auspices of a environmental impact report. The more recent addition of the 81 units has been reviewed under an environmental an MND, and that is appropriate for this expansion. So the MND, or mitigated negative declaration, has actually been approved by the Planning Commission and is recommended for approval by Council.
So all the impacts that have been identified, because the additional 81 units have been mitigated based on the design and the way the project is being proposed.
That is correct. It's been addressed in the mitigated negative declaration, and along with mitigation conditions that are attached to this zone change.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, I'd like to move that we approve the request, and then we move forward on this item. Council?
Second.
That'll be
With the modification requested
Yes.
by applicant?
yes, with the technical modification.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 3.
Item 3, Councilman, is a report from the Planning Commission. It's an ordinance and a zone and height district change for a mixed-use building with 68 dwelling units in CD4.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kevin Jones. I was a hearing officer assigned to this case.
Just speak a little closer to the microphone. They can hear you better.
What we have here is a project located at 10601 through 10623 Riverside Drive at the corner of Cahuenga and Riverside Drive. What is before you is a request for a zone change to change the zone from C2-1VL to the mixed use zone of RAS 4-1VL. There is a zone variance to allow heights of up to 72 feet, and the site plan review for more than 50 dwelling units. As the legislative analyst said, that this project will allow for 68 dwelling units and approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial space. Also, what's on this site is the Bachman cultural monument that is on the site that will be moved from the site to allow the construction of the parking building and the rest of the structure of the commercial and residential building for the monument to be returned to the site, but in a slightly different location. So we have included conditions in the staff report and recommended for approval by the commission to find ways to preserve that cultural monument on this site. And with that, I'll step aside if you have any questions.
So given the obligation to bring back that historic structure on site, do we have the type of language that reaffirms that commitment in your current report?
In the current report, in condition number 6 of conditions of approval on page C1, there is language that talks about one method. However, the city attorney has identified that that might not be adequate enough to, as it's currently written, but we certainly could revise that condition to before it goes to council.
So we can look forward to the type of language by the time this gets to council that emphasizes accountability and that the timeliness of getting that historic structure back onto the lot will be established?
That's correct.
Okay, well, thank you. Then let's go through public comment, then we'll go from there. Okay. So with us, Mark Armbruster, Daniel Klinger, and Dr. Clyde Williams.
Mark Armbruster again, with Armbruster and Goldsmith, representing the applicant in this case. Here once again, we are here to urge you to recommend approval of the unanimous Planning Commission action on this case. This is a case in which again, we've worked, and our client has worked extensively with the community and specifically with the Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council on this project. Our client, when it came to their attention, the community concern for preservation of the Bachman House, our client voluntarily participated in the process for seeing that here at the City Plum Committee and City Council that house was so designated and will be preserved. In addition, we worked extensively with many meetings with the Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council with the architecture and the design of the building, and that's why they, on a 17-to-1 vote, urged approval of this with the conditions contained herein. Lastly, on the historic resources language, it just came to my attention before the committee today that there was this one question about the language in number 6, and we would ask that we be able to work out revised language between now and when it goes to City Council, which we'll work with the City Attorney on.
Well, that's what we're going to attempt to do. I was inclined to just continue it, but if we can do it between now and council, that's fine as well.
Yes, I'm confident that that will not be a problem.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Daniel Klinger? Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Klinger with CSA Architects. I'm the architect for the project, and if there have any questions that you might like to ask of me, I'm obviously in support of the project and have worked hard with the neighborhood group and other agencies to get this project to where it is today. And so if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or
no,
if
I'm
not, then
reviewed the plans and they look, thank you.
Great.
They're good. No? Okay, Dr. Williams. Doug Mensman, I believe. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Councilmember. Doug Minson, representing Councilmember Tom LaBonge. Just wanted to let you guys know, obviously, we support this project. You can kind of tell the applicants worked for a long time with the community to get to a project that is acceptable here. We just found out also about the issue with that verbiage there, and would be more than willing to facilitate that, help figure that out, some sort of milestone that makes Ms. Burge happy by the time we get this to the council floor.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any questions from my colleague? So we can move to approve this item?
Approve as
That'll be the
amended.
action of this committee.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you. Okay, next item, Roberto.
Item 4, Councilman, is a Cultural Heritage Commission report to include the Beverly Sycamore, which is a multifamily residential building, as a historic cultural monument.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon. Ken Bernstein with the Office of Historic Resources. This is the proposed historic cultural monument for the Beverly Sycamore Apartments. The cultural heritage recommendation is to approve the Beverly Sycamore as a historic cultural monument as an example of chateau-esque French Norman Revival style residential architecture. The building was designed in 1928 by architect James N. Conway, who was also the architect of a multifamily complex in Westwood that is historic cultural monument number 446 and 447.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a couple of cards on this one. We have Mrs. Patricia Kelly, and then we have Dr. Clyde Williams.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Patricia Kelly. I'm a writer. I'm also the widow of the director-dancer Gene Kelly, and I'm an owner and resident of one of the townhomes at the Beverly Sycamore, located at 308 North Sycamore Avenue in Council District Number 5. The Cultural Heritage Commission has provided a detailed and unanimous recommendation to the council for including our property in the list of historic cultural monuments, citing the many historical and architectural features that warrant such a designation. I come to you today as a homeowner and as a member of the community, asking you to accept the Commission's recommendation. The Beverly Sycamore is unique here in Los Angeles. We've provided you with a brochure. You can see it here on this is the familiar building in front of you. Built in 1928, it is a landmark. Anyone who has driven on Beverly Boulevard downtown will know this elegant five-story structure on the north side of the block between Orange Drive and Sycamore. The structure also has a place, in addition to its architectural significance, it has a cultural history as a frequently photographed building that has found its way into many television series and feature films, including the Oscar-winning Best Picture of the Year in 1946, The Best Years of Our Lives. I strongly urge you to accept the Commission's recommendation to include the Beverly Sycamore among the list of historic monuments, so this very special property can be preserved for others to enjoy in perpetuity. I have just one thing. The property actually consists of the main building, which is a five-story structure. In addition, there are two townhomes. The legal address is 308 North Sycamore Avenue. However, the townhomes are located on Orange Drive. So I just wanted to submit, the application had both the 308 North Sycamore and the Orange Drive listed as AKA. So I just wanted to submit that to make sure that the townhomes aren't excluded from that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Please submit that for the record. Thank you very much for taking the time. Mr. Williams, do you want to speak on this one? Okay, I'm just reading what the submitted. I got cards. Okay. Just want to make sure I don't ignore you. Okay, so we can move to approve the designation. There'll be a second.
Second.
Councilmember, I need clarification, as there are two additional addresses that weren't a portion of the original Commission's recommendation, that the last speaker submitted at 303 North Orange Drive and 307 North Orange Drive that were not approved as part of the Cultural Heritage Commission's action.
Yeah,
so we need clarification.
Can I have staff come on up? Can you shed some light on this slight confusion here?
Yes, I believe that the entire property is on a single parcel, and while the address refers to, well, there are multiple addresses on the property, the designation, the scope of the nomination, and the scope of the Commission's action was all encompassing, including the entire property. But if it would be helpful to clarify that if there is some confusion, staff is supportive of that request. The intent was to include the entirety of the property.
So that would include the two addresses that our public speaker has identified?
Yes, I believe that's correct. That the original nomination stated that the address was 308 North Sycamore, but mentioned the additional buildings with separate addresses. When the Commission approves these designations, it does apply to the entirety of the property.
It does not.
So it does.
It does.
So our interpretation would be that it already does apply to those buildings. The intent was to include those. But if it would be helpful to clarify that by specifically citing the additional addresses, that would be appropriate.
But just for the clarity and avoid ambiguity in the future, should there be any other kind of action taken, we want to make sure we're very clear for the record. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Okay, so you can move to approve, and that'll be the action of this committee. Our next item, Roberto?
That would be item 6, Councilman. It's an appeal by Howard Haynes and Sharon Sue Haynes They're appealing the advisory agency's disapproval of a tract map for a 30-unit condo conversion.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Harper. I was the Deputy Advisory Agency on this case. You have before you an appeal of a 30-unit condo conversion denial by the advisory agency. The advisory agency held the hearing on September 18th, 2008. The letter of determination denying the condo conversion was issued September 30th, 2008, and the applicant subsequently appealed the denial. The Area Planning Commission heard the appeal and at a vote to 2-2 by operation law effectively sustained the Deputy Advisory Agency's denial. The site is approximately 1 acre. It's got 30 units on it. Currently it has 60 parking spaces. The advisory agency's denial of the condo conversion was based on a number of issues. One was the parking. There is a queue condition, a permanent queue condition on the site and on several other lots around that require an additional quarter guest parking space per unit. The advisory agency determined that even though this was a condo conversion, and the ordinance establishing the extra guest parking still applied, and if the applicant wanted to reduce their parking, they should apply for a zone variance from the queue. Consequently, they should have had 62 parking spaces instead of 60. The applicant, however, made it clear, and it was seemed apparent from looking at the plot plan that it would be a very simple procedure to restripe the parking, and that probably there could have been a revised preliminary tentative track map that would have reflected the needed parking. The second reason was tenant notification. Tenant notification is very complicated. It includes state law and our laws and recent ordinances regarding relocation. After going through the package very carefully, we found 6 incidences of inconsistencies in out of the 28 to 30 tenants, and so we were not reassured that tenant notification had been adequate. The third issue was the low rental. Pardon?
So the tenant notification was not adequate?
That was a determination at the time. The state law requires that 60 days before an application for condo conversion is submitted, that the tenants have to be notified. And the law references that service by mail shall be adequate. In this case, they did submit a personal service signed by the property manager for most of the units, but there are approximately 4 to 6 instances where the names that they said they served did not match their tenant list. And so because they did not meet the letter of the law, at least that was the judgment of the Deputy Advisory Agency. I don't know how the city attorney would feel about this. And because there were some discrepancies, we didn't accept that as proof.
Okay.
The third reason that the Deputy Advisory Agency denied the condo conversion was based on the requirement in our codes that we make a finding that if the vacancy rate for that community plan area being Pacoima City, that if it's below 5%, then the Deputy Advisory Agency needs to make a finding that this condo conversion would not result in a negative cumulative impact on the rental stock. At the time, in September, the vacancy rate in that area was 2.8. I understand now it's up to 3.2. And because we didn't see any substantial numbers of tenants signing documents that they were willing to purchase their units, we felt that the cumulative impact would be substantial. Yeah. So, go ahead.
In the process, when we speak to who participated in the different proceedings, were tenants involved as it was going through its process?
Well, typically at a deputy advisory agency hearing in a case like this, you will get a number of tenants, whether they support or against the conversion. We didn't have any tenants attend our public hearing. And again, when the item was appealed, we didn't have tenants attend either, even though our office did mail to every tenant a copy of the appeal document.
Okay.
So that's it in a sort of nutshell. So
Okay.
if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, let's go to the public comment, and we might ask you to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask the appellants if they are present. Okay, so I have Amy Shin.
Sai Shen.
Sai Shen.
Good afternoon.
I apologize. Amy Sai Shen.
Good afternoon,
Please.
council members. Amy Sai Shen from Jeffrey Mangels Butler Marlboro. We're at 1900 Avenue of the Stars, 7th floor, Los Angeles, 90035. I am here today to first address the issues that the planning staff brought up, the three insufficiencies of why they denied the project in the first place. With respect to parking spaces, we first feel that the queue condition does not apply to the condo conversion because it's a non-conforming building. However, in the interest of working with staff, our client has provided a revised parking plan which was attached to our letter brief submitted back in January. It's Exhibit C, which actually provides 3 additional parking spaces. That's twice more than is required by staff. So that's issue number 1. Second issue is with respect to tenant notification. If you will note in Exhibit D of our letter brief, we first provided a summary broken down by tenants showing whether they've either received service, personal service from the property manager, as Ms. Harper recognized, or the tenants themselves have executed an acknowledgement showing that they are aware of this intention to convert. And just to back up that comment, last Thursday, I joined the Councilman Alarcon's deputy staff, Eric Sagai and Manny Figueres, to speak to tenants at the site. And we knocked on every single door and spoke to every single tenant who was available at that time. And they stated that they were absolutely aware of the condo conversion and they were aware of the relocation assistance that they would be offered. The final point with respect to the 5% vacancy rate is that it's a 2-part process. So not only do you have to find that the vacancy rate is less than 5%, but that's just the triggering point. To the extent that it is less than 5%, then you move on to the second point, which allows the advisory agency to disapprove the project if there is a cumulative significant impact on the rental market. And we have shown amply with exhibits and with speaking to staff that, speaking to tenants that there is no significant cumulative effect on the rental market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shin. Benjamin Resnick.
Council members, Ben Resnick again with Amy Seishen's office. Very briefly, I want to address a topic that is, I think, important in this case, and that is that there's an opportunity for tenants. Quite a few of the tenants signed intentions to buy these units. And I want to point out that we did a spreadsheet, which I'd be happy to submit to the committee, showing prices for the 1-bedrooms of approximately $125,000 and for the 2 bedrooms at $175,000. We did a calculations based on 10% down, 5.5% mortgage rates, which, by the way, today are down, much below that. And it turns out that a tenant if he has the mortgage and could easily qualify, pays $639 a month on a mortgage of $112,000, which is less than half the rent they're paying now. So a tenant could actually afford a mortgage, pay the property taxes, pay the homeowners association fees, all within the amount of rent they're paying now, if not less. And to boot, there's a new CRA program that's about to be started in the spring of 2009, which I assume will be shortly, that will help these very homeowners. This is a CRA LA East Valley region home ownership opportunity program that will provide gap financing. So those homeowners who get a conventional loan and can't quite get the full amount will get a very favorable gap financing if they qualify. All this to say is that this is not a cumulative adverse impact on residential living in this valley. In fact, it's a positive impact. As Amy pointed out before, the less than 5% figure, first of all, is just a starting block. And then you have to show that there's cumulative adverse impacts. Well, how does the city get the 5% figure, right? They use Department of Water and Power figures. Well, our client, as well as many others in the valley, oftentimes do not shut off utilities when there's a vacancy. Why? Because you can't show the unit if it's dark. And so the DWP figures that planning department relies on to show that there's less than 5% vacancy is not an accurate figure, because there are utilities on in many vacant units. And so the municipal code doesn't say you use the Department of Water and Power figures. It just says you use the appropriate data. So planning uses DWP because you have no other source to go to, but we've submitted data showing the entire San Fernando Valley is well in excess of 5% vacancy factor, and from the apartment association numbers and others. And so there is no cumulative adverse impact on neighbors because, one, many of them want to buy these units. Number two, we're not demolishing units, so these units are all being converted for affordable home ownership. And so, as such, we think this is a perfect scenario for allowing the conversion.
Mr. Resnick, I'd like to ask you to conclude. If
I'm done. Thank you very
good.
much.
Okay. Our next speaker, Dan Sparks, I believe.
The gentleman here is the representative for the owner, does not feel a need to speak unless there are questions asked that he might be in a position to answer.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Williams, Dr. Williams.
Finally, the advisory group got it right. We're concerned about, my name is Clyde Williams. I'm resident of 4115 Barrett Road in El Sereno. The advisory agency finally got it right. Why can't the applicant provide the adequate documentation and timely notification prior to issuing the request for conversion? We're concerned about this in El Sereno because we have a lot of apartment houses and a lot of people want to cash them out. So I don't know about the details of this particular project, but we're concerned about timely notification and working through the community agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have Mr. Faisal Al-Sari from the Council Office.
Good afternoon, council members. Faisal Al-Sari, Planning Deputy for Council Member Richard Alarcon. I'm here today to relay the council members' support of this appeal and recommending approval of this project. This is a great opportunity for our district to increase home ownership. We've worked out some of the numbers and have shown that for many of these tenants, the price that they would be paying for a mortgage would be less than than they are currently paying for rent. Council staff did go out to the site and knocked on the doors of the tenants and verbally received confirmation that 10 out of the 26 tenants at that site are interested in purchasing those properties. So we believe that that's a significant number of individuals that would benefit from this project moving forward. Also, just as a last note, council staff commends the applicant on a very well maintained site, respective to the rest of the units on that block. This is a very nice building.
Right.
Thank you.
There is, before you leave, there is a concern of mine in terms of the precedent we set when we don't accept, when we, put it this way, when we allow for the 60-day notice not to be complete. That's a very critical juncture and concern of mine. And I'll ask the planning staff to come back and just kind of revisit and restate what actually was turned in. I would have hope that setting aside all of the positives of this project, and I commend your staff, your office, in working the way it did, but that 60-day notice is such a critical stage. I'm thinking of the 4 to 6 families who might not have known of their options. We have no record of where they're at least now we have to track them down. But the fact is, these were families that moved on without the benefit of the law. And that to me is very troublesome, just out of principle. Right. We know these waves come and go. We felt it 2-3 years ago with the condo conversion energy that occurred here, and many people were essentially booted out without any real acknowledgement because of our lack of enforcing the law. So that to me is a very critical issue. So I just want to share that thought with you before we move on in this discussion.
Right. And also, if I could address the council office as well at this time, I'm a bit troubled with this project. I've seen a number of projects come through this, and on this one, I think it doesn't come close to me in 2 respects. One is on the technical merits in terms of all the items that were found troublesome by the advisory agency, whether how the applicant dealt with tenants and the notification, as well as the parking. It seemed to me that this could have been a better application to pull back and try again, rather than try to ram it and push it through this very arbitrary system that we have here in the city of Los Angeles as to how we approve projects. And secondly, I don't think this meets our public policy goal that we're trying to achieve in the city, especially in a time with a very strong rental market. We're going to a buyer's market in an area that has a very low, it has a 3.2% vacancy rate. I think for me, on both fronts, not meeting the requirements that you're supposed to meet, secondly, not meeting the public policy goals of the city, I would have a very hard time supporting this project. And I would have suggested to the applicant after the advisory agency saw this to start from the beginning. Why try to push it and ram it through? That's not a good way of planning this city. Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to, please sit down, Mr. Resnick. Please sit down. Thank you, sir. Could you have the staff come back?
Hi, Lynn Harper again. Would you like me to respond to the questions I heard earlier? Or?
Yes, well, the questions, and then I have a question for you. And well, let me ask my question first. If we were to roll back and make sure that this is done right, that we actually get verification, 60-day notice, how much longer will this case take? Can we fast-track this project, fast-track this case so that we can get to their goals under the proper legal procedures that have been put in place?
We can. We could ask them to reapply, get another application number. Most of what's in their file could be reused, most of the information, because it's not that old a case. And then hold a public hearing, assuming they did the formal notification 60 days before they apply, hold a public hearing shortly after their application. We're in a good position that we don't have a backlog right now in these cases, so we could hear it right away. I'd also like to to give a little more information about
Please.
the nature of the notification. The 60-day notification in the file was a personal service, and it was signed by the property management. We found 6 different instances where the information on the notice of service was different than on the tenant list. There may be good reasons for that, and there may, even if they're not good reasons for that, maybe there's a way we can go find that other tenant that left. The purpose of the 60-day notice for the state is so that the tenants are well informed that it's going to convert, and they aren't pushed out or asked to leave or whatever and give up their rights not knowing what was in the mind of the landowner. I mean, it's a subjective amount of time. It's 60 days. So given that the information that Mr. Resnick and his staff provided about the affordability of the units was not before us when we heard it, either as before the advisory agency or the area planning commission. So in light of that, and if we could get, I would recommend that each of these 6 cases that we've identified, and I can give you the unit numbers. We have problems with unit number 103, 115, 206, 207, 210, and unit number 213, if those could be resolved so that we felt that there was fair notice, perhaps, and if the council office finds that this fits in with their public policy goals of providing home ownership, that might be another way to move forward.
Okay, so run that by me one more time.
What I'm suggesting, there's 2 tactics to take here. One is to create a completely new, clean file that we would fast track through the process, meaning we would, as soon as we got the application, schedule it for hearing in a timely manner, assuming that the application was filed 60 days after they notified by mail every tenant in the building. It creates a very clean file. The second thing would be to ask to go ahead with this filing if it's in the committee's opinion that this appeal should be granted, that nonetheless that the 6 problematic units in terms of notification are rectified by the applicant, either by showing that the person that was supposed to be notified was, or by finding that person and making sure they know what their relocation rights are.
Gotcha. Council member, do you have a question?
Pardon me?
Do you have any questions on this?
Yeah, well, I have one question. We are, throughout the city, converting, or we have been converting apartments to condos. We are in a situation now where we have an overflow of condos, and they're reverting back to rentals because they cannot sell them. I mean, just read an article this morning in Downtown News where they had an auction of some condos. So aren't we defeating the purpose of affordability here, because they're going to end up going back at higher rates than anticipated? So we are knocking off some affordable units, and they're going to come back on the market potentially at higher rates than what they are now.
Well, it is a concern, and I'm not saying in this case because I don't have enough data to make the judgment in this case on that issue, but there have been cases where tenants organizations have accused landlords of converting to get around rent control, and in addition, as you mentioned, there might be a market mechanism that's emerging in this economy that is creating an awkwardness. Mm-hmm. I don't have enough information to confirm
when
or
I
deny
saw
in
the
this
income
case.
levels of most of these folks, and the questions are raised, well, we will provide you a first-time home buyer here if we could. If you look at their income levels, probably just one would be able to get a 15%, 10% down to purchase these units. So we know that none of these folks are going to come back. I just look at this as an applicant who was sloppy when first applied for this, didn't care much for the rules, and now that's something that's going contrary to the public policy goals of the city, which is to preserve affordable units and try to make some folks first-time home buyers. But here I just don't see it. It's not going to, with the income levels of these folks, it's not going to happen.
Okay.
I still remain that I will cast a Denial of the appeal.
And I will second that.
Anything
So we'll deny the appeal, and can we do this? If they were to come back, the 60-day notice, we can fast track that if they so choose.
And you can definitely direct or request that the department do that.
Okay. Okay, so that'll be there to deny the appeal filed by Howard Bruce Haynes Jr. and Sharon Sue Haynes, David Waite, and thereby sustain the entire decision of the advisory agency and district superintendent track number 69481, and that'll be the action of this committee.
I apologize, I heard a portion of that. So we're denying it. Are we giving the option to refile, reapply?
That's up
Is
to
that
them.
the option? Okay, thank
That's
you
up to
very
them, but we are saying we commit to fast track, just to make sure they follow the procedures as they have been stated with the 60-day notice.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, that'll be the action of this committee. Our next item, Roberto?
There's an item 7, Councilman. I don't know if the Director of Planning will be submitting a report.
No, she can make it today, and there's no report to submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Great pinch hitting. Okay. Public comment, we do have a card, and that's Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. The Hillside Ordinance meetings are coming up. We would hope that the council or the committee and other Hillside districts participate by having at least a representative at each one of the meetings. We'd also like to have the central and eastern venue changed to a more eastern Hillside location, such as El Sereno. We're concerned regarding the development of our ridge lines. The Hillside ordinance for the El Sereno and Lincoln Heights area didn't do a very good job. Apparently there's no contractors within the planning department and they don't know how to build on hillsides. We would, however, recommend promoting a much needed median affordable owner-occupied housing. That is, below 500 feet elevation, using existing available infrastructure, and promoting DASH and MTA transit lines for our area. And in regard to the previous issue on number 6, we gathered over 2,000 signatures on petitions for Bus 256 in 4 days. So I don't see why 30 units couldn't be reviewed rather quickly. So we'd like to have representatives of your staffs and those of other Hillside members to be present in the meetings so that you get direct feedback rather than through the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, seeing no one else for public comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.